Imagine a life meticulously crafted. A picture of suburban bliss painted in soft pastel hues, a beautiful home, a successful husband, and the quiet hum of routine. Now, picture that canvas ripped apart, the colors bleeding into a violent, chaotic mess, all because of a single, misplaced lipstick. That's where our story begins, a tale of shattered trust, and a wife who decided that betrayal deserved a dessert, served ice-cold, and laced with something far more potent than sugar. This is the story of Eleanor, a woman who discovered her husband's infidelity and didn't just get mad, she got even, with a chillingly calculated plan that turned a romantic getaway into a double funeral. Welcome back to True Crime Atlas, where we delve into the darkest corners of the human heart, exploring the twisted paths that lead ordinary people to commit extraordinary acts. Thank you for joining us today as we unpack the unsettling case of Eleanor and Mark, a story that proves appearances can be devastatingly deceiving, and that revenge, while sometimes sweet, can leave a bitter taste for everyone involved. Eleanor and Mark Ashton were, to all outward appearances, the golden couple. 15 years of marriage had weathered them into a comfortable, familiar unit. They lived in a sprawling Victorian house in a leafy suburb, the kind where manicured lawns stretched towards the horizon and the air hummed with the gentle drone of sprinklers. Mark was a successful architect, his days filled with blueprints and client meetings. His evenings typically spent unwinding with Eleanor over a glass of wine and the evening news. Eleanor, a data analyst for a large corporation, possessed a mind as sharp and organized as her meticulously kept home. Their life wasn't flashy, but it was stable, predictable, and seemingly secure. However, beneath the veneer of domestic tranquility, hairline fractures were beginning to spiderweb across the surface of their marriage. Eleanor, with her innate attention to detail, started noticing subtle anomalies, tiny dissonances in the symphony of their daily life. Mark, once reliably home by 6, was now frequently working late, citing urgent deadlines and demanding clients. His explanations, initially plausible, began to sound rehearsed, lacking the casual spontaneity she was accustomed to. He started using a new musky cologne, a sharp departure from his usual understated scents, claiming it was a gift from a particularly grateful client. Eleanor raised an eyebrow internally, a flicker of unease sparking within her. But she pushed it down, attributing it to stress and the pressures of modern life. Perhaps she was just being overly sensitive. But then came the lipstick. It was a Tuesday morning. Eleanor was tidying up Mark's car before he left for work. A small act of domesticity she performed out of habit, not obligation. She found it nestled in the side door pocket, a vibrant, almost aggressive shade of crimson, completely alien to her own muted palette of nudes and soft pinks. Eleanor rarely wore lipstick, preferring a natural look, and when she did, it was never anything remotely close to this bold, attention-grabbing red. She picked it up, turning the tube over in her fingers, the foreign color a jarring intrusion into her familiar world. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. It was a small thing, insignificant on its own, but coupled with the late nights, the new cologne, and a growing sense of emotional distance from Mark, it became a significant piece in a puzzle she hadn't realized she was starting to assemble. The lipstick was the catalyst, the tiny pebble that started an avalanche of suspicion. Eleanor, a woman who thrived on logic and data, her unease morphed into a gnawing suspicion, a relentless itch in the back of her mind that demanded to be scratched. She decided to investigate, not with wild accusations or dramatic confrontations, but with the same methodical precision she applied to her work. She started subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. She paid closer attention to their shared credit card statements, meticulously scanning each line item, searching for unfamiliar restaurant names, hotel charges, anything that deviated from their usual spending patterns. She started noting down Mark's business trips, cross-referencing them with his work calendar, and finding discrepancies in his stated locations and the actual dates he was away. Driven by a growing need for answers, Eleanor ventured into slightly more intrusive territory. She created a dummy social media profile, using a generic name and a fabricated backstory, and started following Mark on various platforms, a digital shadow lurking in his online sphere. She scanned his public posts, looking for any clues, any interactions that seemed out of place. It was a slow, painstaking process, sifting through digital breadcrumbs, but Eleanor was nothing if not persistent. However, she knew that to truly uncover the truth, she needed to delve deeper, to access the private corners of Mark's digital life. The crucial breakthrough came with the keylogger. Eleanor, under the guise of improving their home security, convinced Mark that they needed to install a new software on their shared home computer, a device they both used for everything from online banking to household management. She researched and downloaded a discreet keylogger program, cleverly disguised within a legitimate security suite. Once installed, it ran silently in the background, recording every keystroke, every website visited, every email typed. Eleanor waited for a few days, letting the program gather data, her anxiety building with each passing hour. Finally, the day arrived when she felt ready to confront the potential truth. Late one night, after Mark was asleep, Eleanor sat down at the computer, her heart pounding against her ribs. She accessed the keylogger logs, a raw stream of data that initially seemed like gibberish. But as she filtered and sorted, patterns emerged, words coalesced into sentences, and fragmented conversations began to take shape. And then she saw it. Email exchanges, chat logs, all hidden within seemingly innocuous files, revealing a clandestine affair with a colleague named Clara. The messages were like shards of glass, ripping through the carefully constructed fabric of Eleanor's reality. They were explicit, filled with intimate details, stolen moments, and promises of a future together. Clara, a younger, vivacious woman from Mark's office, was painted as the antidote to his stale marriage, the spark that had reignited his passion. Eleanor read through them, line after agonizing line, her breath catching in her throat, her hands trembling. The words danced before her eyes, each one a fresh stab of pain, confirming her worst fears, shattering her world into a million irreparable pieces. The lipstick, the late nights, the cologne, it all clicked into place with sickening clarity. The initial shock gave way to a wave of nausea, then a burning, white-hot rage. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the screen. But she blinked them back, refusing to let herself succumb to emotional collapse. This wasn't just about hurt feelings. This was about betrayal, about deceit, about the systematic dismantling of everything she had believed in, everything she had built with Mark. As she scrolled through the messages, a chilling calm began to descend upon her, replacing the initial fury with a cold, focused resolve. The tears dried up, the trembling subsided, and in their place emerged a steely determination. She wouldn't scream, she wouldn't beg, she wouldn't plead, she would act. But her actions wouldn't be impulsive or rash. They would be calculated, precise, and devastatingly effective. Eleanor retreated into the icy fortress of her mind, her analytical brain now laser-focused on a single objective: retribution. She spent the next few days observing Mark, studying his routine, listening to his conversations, gathering information like a meticulous spy. She learned that he and Clara were planning a weekend getaway to a secluded cabin in the mountains, a romantic escape far from prying eyes and the constraints of their everyday lives. This was it, Eleanor realized, her opportunity. She wouldn't confront them, wouldn't create a messy scene. She would orchestrate something far more subtle, far more final. An old memory surfaced, a forgotten hobby from her youth. Botany. As a teenager, Eleanor had been fascinated by plants, spending hours in her grandmother's garden, learning about different species, their properties, their hidden secrets. She remembered reading about poisonous plants, about the delicate line between healing and harm in the natural world. Now, that long dormant knowledge became a weapon. She spent hours online, researching potent plant-based poisons. Oleander. The name floated into her consciousness, a beautiful, deceptively innocent-sounding word for a plant of lethal potential. Oleander, with its vibrant flowers and lush green leaves, was a common ornamental shrub, often planted in gardens and public spaces for its hardiness and beauty. And it grew in her own garden, a row of oleander bushes lining the back fence, a decorative border she had barely noticed before. She delved deeper into her research, learning about cardiac glycosides, the potent toxins contained within oleander leaves and flowers. These compounds, she discovered, could disrupt the heart's rhythm, leading to fatal heart failure. The symptoms, depending on the dose and individual sensitivity, could mimic a natural cardiac event, making it difficult to distinguish from other causes of death, especially if toxicology wasn't specifically looking for oleander toxins. The plan began to form in her mind, taking shape with chilling clarity. She wouldn't use a dramatic, obvious poison. She would use something subtle, something natural, something that could be easily incorporated into food. She decided on lemon bars. Mark loved lemon bars. She often baked them for him, his favorite treat, a symbol of their domestic comfort, now to be twisted into a symbol of their impending doom. Under the pretense of wanting to bake something special for Mark before his business trip, Eleanor embarked on her grim culinary endeavor. She gathered the ingredients, her movements precise and deliberate. As she measured flour and sugar, her mind raced, calculating dosages, planning every step with meticulous care. She went into the garden, to the oleander bushes, and carefully, deliberately, began to harvest the leaves and flowers. She wore gloves, remembering warnings about skin irritation. But her hands didn't tremble. She was in control, finally, taking charge of a situation that had felt utterly out of her control. Back in the kitchen, she meticulously washed and dried the oleander parts. Then, using a mortar and pestle, she began to grind them into a fine powder, the fragrant citrus scent of lemons battling with the faint, acrid smell of the poison. She sifted the powder repeatedly, ensuring it was as fine as talcum powder, undetectable to the eye and palate. When the lemon bar filling was ready, a bright, tangy yellow mixture, she subtly incorporated the oleander extract, mixing it thoroughly. Knowing that the strong lemon flavor would mask any potential bitterness, the aroma of baking lemon bars filled the house, a comforting, familiar scent that belied the deadly secret hidden within. Eleanor moved through the motions of baking, a macabre performance of domesticity. She carefully cut the cooled bars into neat squares, arranging them on a plate, their golden crusts gleaming invitingly. They looked perfect, innocent, utterly delicious. And deadly. The weekend arrived, and Mark, Eleanor watched him, her face betraying nothing. A perfect wife seeing her husband off on a trip. She even helped him pack the lemon bars, placing them carefully in a container, suggesting they would be a perfect treat for their cabin in the woods. Mark, completely oblivious to the lethal cargo he was carrying, thanked her with a quick kiss, his mind already miles away. lost in anticipation of his illicit rendezvous. He left, whistling a cheerful tune, leaving Eleanor alone in the silence of their home, the air thick with the scent of lemons and the heavy weight of her secret. Later that weekend, a frantic call pierced the quiet Sunday afternoon at the local police station. The caretaker of a remote cabin in the mountains had discovered two unresponsive bodies. Mark Ashton and Clara Jenkins were found in the cabin's bedroom, seemingly having succumbed to a sudden, unexplained illness. Initial responders found no signs of forced entry or foul play. The cabin was cozy, idyllic, the scene undisturbed except for the two lifeless figures. The initial assumption leaned towards carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater, or perhaps a rare simultaneous medical event. Paramedics confirmed their deaths at the scene, noting the rapid onset of what appeared to be cardiac arrest. However, at the county morgue, Dr. Ramirez, a seasoned medical examiner with an eye for detail, noticed something unusual. Both victims were relatively young and healthy, with no pre-existing conditions that would explain sudden, simultaneous heart failure. The rapid onset and similar symptoms in both individuals raised a red flag. During the routine autopsy, Dr. Ramirez detected subtle. He ordered a more detailed toxicological analysis, specifically requesting a screen for plant-based toxins, a step that wouldn't have been taken in a routine sudden death investigation. Days later, the lab results came back, confirming Dr. Ramirez's suspicions. The toxicology report revealed the presence of oleander toxins in both Mark and Clara's systems, in concentrations high enough to be lethal. The investigation shifted immediately from accidental death to suspected poisoning. Detectives retraced Mark and Clara's last movements, focusing on their weekend getaway to the cabin. They found the container of lemon bars in the cabin's kitchen, partially eaten. A sample was sent to the lab, and the results were conclusive. Oleander toxins were present in the lemon bars. The investigation led them back to Eleanor. They learned about her marriage to Mark, their seemingly perfect life, and the recent business trip. A search warrant was issued for the Ashton residence. Detectives found the oleander bushes in the garden, leaves and flowers noticeably missing. A search of Eleanor's computer history revealed a chilling pattern of online searches. Oleander toxicity, symptoms of oleander poisoning, undetectable plant poisons, and recipes for lemon bars. The digital breadcrumbs painted a damning picture of premeditated poisoning. Eleanor was brought in for questioning. Initially, she maintained a composed denial, her demeanor calm and collected, almost unnervingly so. She claimed to be shocked and devastated by Mark's death, expressing confusion about Clara's presence at the cabin. She denied any knowledge of poison, any involvement in their deaths. But the detectives, armed with the forensic evidence and the digital trail, pressed her relentlessly. They presented the toxicology reports, the computer searches, the lemon bars. The walls began to close in. Finally, confronted with the irrefutable weight of the evidence, Eleanor's carefully constructed facade crumbled. The composure cracked, revealing the raw, wounded woman beneath. In a quiet, almost detached voice, she confessed. She recounted Mark's betrayal, the discovery of the affair, the shattering of her trust, and the cold, calculated plan that had taken root in her mind. She described her research, her preparation of the lemon bars, the deliberate act of poisoning. She spoke of feeling betrayed, humiliated, and desperate, claiming it was a moment of extreme emotional distress, a desperate attempt to regain control in a situation that had spiraled into chaos. But even as she spoke of distress, her voice remained flat, devoid of emotion, her eyes cold and distant. The case became a media sensation, splashed across headlines and dissected on every news channel. The lemon bar killer, the tabloids screamed, turning Eleanor into a figure of morbid fascination. The trial was a spectacle, a tragic drama played out in the public eye. The prosecution painted Eleanor as a cold-blooded killer, motivated by jealousy and revenge, meticulously planning and executing a double murder. They presented the forensic evidence, the computer searches, and Eleanor's confession, highlighting the premeditated nature of her actions. The defense argued for a crime of passion, emphasizing Mark's infidelity as a mitigating circumstance, portraying Eleanor as a wronged woman driven to the edge by betrayal and emotional turmoil. They argued that she was not a monster, but a victim of circumstance, a woman pushed to her breaking point. They tried to paint her actions as a momentary lapse in judgment, a desperate act born out of unbearable pain. But the jury wasn't swayed. They saw the forensic evidence, they heard Eleanor's chillingly calm confession, and they witnessed her detached demeanor throughout the trial. They saw not a woman driven to madness, but a woman who had made a calculated choice, a woman who had meticulously planned and executed a double murder. After days of deliberation, the verdict came in. Guilty on 2 counts of second-degree murder. Eleanor stood impassively as the sentence was read. 2 consecutive life sentences, effectively ensuring she would spend the rest of her days behind bars. Her life, once seemingly perfect, was now irrevocably shattered, reduced to the cold gray walls of a prison cell. The sweet taste of revenge had turned bitter, leaving behind a legacy of tragedy and loss. The case of Eleanor Ashton serves as a chilling reminder of the devastating consequences of betrayal. The dark paths grief and anger can lead us down, and the terrifying capacity for calculated revenge that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary lives.